Hi, today I wanted to quickly share something with you. I wanted to share a podcast and trend and it starts, and I hope it will inspire you to start creating and making your own podcast. First, we'll say, is podcasting dead? No, it's not. Is podcasting oversaturated? No, it's not. The first thing I'll tell you is that a lot of people have podcasts, but not everybody is consistent with podcasting. Now you're like, oh, but AI tools, everything is there. Yeah, AI tools, everything is there. But guess what? What these AI tools have done to us is that it has made us really hard to create stuff because now everybody can create content out there. So even those who think have a level of expertise, their content is a commodity. So now you need to have a story. You need to be in the trenches doing what you talk or say that you do, which is one. Now there's this stat I saw that I think is really fascinating, and the stat was that only only 10% of podcasters publish up to 21 episodes. Yeah, sorry, only 10% publish more than 3 episodes. And of that 10%, only 10% publish up to 21 episodes. So the question is, how far can you go? Now, first, granted you're just starting a podcast, you're not so good. How are you going to improve your skills? By practicing. Not just practicing in your mind, I mean publishing actual content, by shipping it out there, by creating and iterating over time. That's the way you build your podcast. That's the way you make your podcast better. Now the question is podcasting dead? Is podcasting dead? No, it's not. Is there competition? Yes, there is. But the difference between podcasting and YouTube, of course, YouTube has made it easier to grow podcasts now, is that with podcast, there are niche topics that have not even been covered. Like there's a whole gap of podcast, like a whole gap in podcast that, okay, of course, marketing business, that's competitive, that's competitive, that's popular, but there are other things which people are not talking about. And if you are maybe not in Nigeria, sorry, not in the US, or even if you're in the West, or maybe you're in the West, but you're not exactly from the West, you know what I mean? And you have other countries like third world countries or other places where you feel that because everybody's just talking about US, UK. Most of all the podcasts are from US, UK. What about other countries? How do we create podcasts and narratives for people? Sometimes I look at the industry and I'm like, yeah, people are trying, but they're not really creating that much value of content. It's not that I can create that value of content, but I have seen it. I know what is possible. You get, would eventually get there and work towards it. But however, you create podcasts for your own country, for your own state. Let's say it's a business podcast bought for Nigerians, it's a business podcast bought for Indians, it's a business podcast bought for Indian ladies. So I'm just saying, you get, create such a podcast that people would love it. They'll feel that connection and they'll be faithful. That's one thing I love about podcast. If you get 100 listens today, it's not like YouTube. Like you might get 100 views today. Tomorrow you get one view, or nobody will view your video. But with podcast, you get 100 listens. You can keep getting that 100 listens for 6 months to come. Yeah, and if people say, "Oh, I'm not growing," but you are getting people to watch your stuff, to listen to your stuff. You know what that means? So do try and start a podcast if that's what you're considering, and stop thinking about if it's saturated or not. Do subscribe, and until next time, keep creating. And you can watch this video right here where I talk about how I am starting a podcast, and in the next 30 days, I'd be happy to share my results with growing my podcast with you and what I have learned.